All right, peace and much love. Zin Uru here. Welcome to the latest installment of Message from the Minister. And this week's message from the Minister is discipline is destiny. Discipline is destiny. And I want to shout out Dr. Apollo for this week's, the title of this week's. Yeah, he sent that to me. It was something that caught his ear earlier this week. He said, this sounds like one of your titles. And I said, that's the perfect title. Thank you. So yeah, much gratitude for that. You know, discipline is destiny. It's so interesting because as I was, put my notes together and whatnot, it was a deep, just thinking about that concept, it's just one of those ideas that gets really deep. And I started looking and thinking about the word destiny and its root word, which I believe is destine. We'll read that in a minute. And also destination, where we're going. And then I thought about discipline as well because, if we don't discipline ourselves, we are disciplined by others most of the time. If we don't discipline ourselves, we get disciplined by others. And so we have this destination that we're headed to, all of us, no matter where everyone has a destination they're headed to, a destiny. But also everybody is living either the discipline that God is speaking to their heart, or they're being disciplined by the media, by the government, by society, by whatever that is, and a mixture of those. But even a mixture of those is still discipline. So we see our destination and then our discipline. What are we being disciplined with? How are we performing discipline in our lives? Are we listening to hear the voice of God, and not only hear and know the voice of God, but to act upon the voice of God? To act on the voice of God that's speaking through us and to us and giving us clear direction? Do we have the discipline to do that? Or are we being disciplined by the world? And what the world says we should do, and how the world says we should think, and how the world says we should behave. Because that discipline, however it's coming through any individual, anywhere you look, it's setting forward their movement. You see what this hop for us, intelligent movement, not just movement. Theirs isn't hip hop. Ours is intelligent movement springing forward. But they still have a movement. So what's disciplining them is giving them a movement to their destination. And it's like, to me, it's like, whoa, this is like the physics of the universe, right? Because what is our discipline and how disciplined are we? Of course, there's always physical discipline, Rocky training, the pro athlete disciplined, for their sports. Steph Curry's discipline, Michael Jordan's discipline, they're disciplined athletes. Then there's the discipline of, I got to feed my family. I got to go to this job. I don't really like it, but hey, it's better than nothing. And we don't have to struggle to eat. So, there's that discipline to get up and go to work every day. Big up on that. And then there's this other discipline that isn't so easy when it comes along. Not always hard. It gets easier. But when we're used to being disciplined by the world, or by the world standards, disciplining ourselves to the world standards, we might hear a voice sometime. And it's the voice of God, clearly. It's something you ain't thought of. It's something you just are feeling. And all of a sudden, it's the answer. And it's asking you to do something that goes against your programming or goes against your set beliefs, and not against like morality, not doing something bad or evil. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that voice of God that's just like urging somebody forward. And then they got to go and do or say something that they haven't really wanted to go do or say. They're like, oh man, I've been putting this off for a while, but yo, I hate this job. I fucking quit. See, the voice of God can work like that. But most people don't acknowledge that. And the voice of God may say, yo, man, how you doing? I'm doing good, man. I'm just looking for some work. Oh, you are? Well, I happen to be looking for somebody who needs some work. I got X amount of dollars for you Thursday and Friday. Were you down? Yeah, okay, I'll pick you up at 7 a.m. Boom, peace. And see, the voice of God is much more diverse even than our individual voices or even the greatest singers. Like the voice of God, the sound of God is all frequency and vibration in the universe. So when God speaks to us, God can speak louder and quieter and softly. So it's not like the voice of God comes on with trumpets all the time, you know, and Jesus called it that still small voice. So there's this still small voice, and then there's the trumpets where it's obvious in your life where God is pointing us. And, you know, really, I look back at God asking me to do stuff at times, and I did it, and I said some things I may have just thought, I was like, dang, I can't believe I just said that, and go back and think about it, but then I see how fun it was, and I see the fun that God was having through that. And, you know, you gotta be mindful, you know, like, you know, I don't know. I've had individual conversations with white folks before where I call them out on being white. And I'm like, yo, you don't even know you're doing this, do you? But this is some racist shit. And they're like, fuck, you got me. And it's like, I had to do that at a job one time, just the way they were treating the workers, like less than, you know, my Mexican brothers and sisters out there working, doing all the landscape, doing all the work, providing the service that brings all the money in, right? And getting just treated less than. And I was like, yo, like, that don't even work. I can't even work like that. I was given a supervising position because of my experience, but then I ran across a young man there, and this dude knew everything that I knew, right? And I was like, yo, why you don't hire him too? Because we need more people as the job. Oh, he doesn't have the experience. I'm like, yo, he does though. I watched him put in the valves. I watched him put out the sprinklers. I watched him make the measurements. He knows all about the plants. He knows all of this. He can read the plans. He can do all of this. And we're short-handed. Why not give him that job? And no, you don't have the experience. I was like, yo, all right, I'm going to just chalk that one up, and they just don't want to pay the guy extra. But the guy actually told me he wouldn't even ask for more money, but he could help the company. If I had somebody working like that for me, I'd be like, yo, come on, let's go, man. We splitting the profits or whatever, right? It's like, I noticed though, that the head office and the owner and you know, I noticed that white, I don't know that they know that they're doing it, right? But maybe they do. I mean, I ain't writing no checks for none of them. But I quit and I say, yo, they feel this way. They feel uncomfortable when you're around. Like they can't come and talk to you. Like they can't even use the bathroom when you guys are around. And the dude was like, no, that ain't true. I'm like, yeah, it is true because that's what I've experienced out there. And I did all of this because God told me to that morning. Dude was shocked. He was stunned. He couldn't get out of his seat. He was stumbling for words. I had this work uniform thing. They gave these shirts, and I had it all washed and folded all nice, like my mom taught me. Put it inside of a nice bag, put it up there, had all of everything that was theirs, took it up there. walked in, put it on his desk, said, hey man, I got to quit. But before I do, I just want to talk to you about the status of the workers here and the way y'all treat them from this office. Dude was just, whoa, I don't think it's that way, wanted to argue with me. I was like, dude, it is that way. And I said, the thing is that if you're ignorant of that, yeah, if you're ignorant of that, then maybe now that you know, you can do something about it. Now, I don't know if he did or didn't. I was gone out of that city pretty quick after that because God was pushing me forward, okay? But I was going to this job I didn't really like, but see, here's the thing. I knew there would be consequences. And that morning, I went in, okay? And this is just me and my story and my experience. Everybody's experience is different, but we all have similarities. And I just woke up that morning and God told me to go in and quit. Told me, I need you to say something. And I'm driving to work like, okay. As soon as I heard that voice, I packed my stuff, folded it up, knew I wasn't going to be working there no more. Looked at my nice little apartment, looked at my truck outside, thought this is 2 trips in my truck because God's moving me again. And I had established a nice little crib. And so I go quit the job, go back, start packing my stuff up, call the landlord. My lease was just up. I told him I was going to renew it, but I told him I had decided not to. He was cool, gave me my full deposit back. So I got my last check, my last deposit, and I went and put my stuff in storage. I drove down to LA, drove out to Ohio, slept on couches, wrote The New Paradigm. Shout out to DJ Adonai and Bach 1. We recorded this, and then, that was it. God had called a specific purpose, and I had to go through an experience. But I didn't even know. I didn't even know that I was going to be going to LA and staying in Boyle Heights and, experiencing Boyle Heights for, 3 months, and then going out to Ohio and experiencing Ohio for 3 months. And I didn't know I was going to experience all of that beforehand. I didn't know. And had I made a different choice and I didn't listen to God that morning, spontaneously listened to God that morning, I felt that God had been speaking to me beforehand, okay? Like full disclosure there. I had been getting whisperings of it, but that morning, God was just like, go, you have to do this, quit this job, let him know why. Just tell the truth. You don't got to be rude, just tell the truth of why you're quitting. I told him it was about my purpose and I didn't know where God was calling me next. I put it out there for him too to know. And then after that, within a week, everything had flip-floriled around in life. All my stuff was in a little storage unit and I was on my way. And that was the destination, okay? That was the destiny of listening to the voice of God in that moment. And I sometimes wonder and think, like, when didn't I listen to the voice of God? Because there were many times. And had I not listened that morning, I would have missed an incredible opportunity for that year. And the Purifier album came out of that. It's all this was just in this quick little time span. And boy, did I get hungry during that time span too. I ain't gonna front. Me and Bach got real skinny. But this marvelous work was getting done. Copies of the Gospel of Hip Hop were going out. I was handing them out. God Loves Hip Hop t-shirts everywhere we went. This is where it's important to know this. And looking back, God was preparing me for that moment. God had prepared my bank account. God had prepared my deposit to come back. God had prepared like just the last weeks, the way that the 2 checks, I was owed like 3 weeks of pay. They just paid me out. Like all of that just lined up. God prepares us ahead of times, even for adventures we don't even know we're going to experience. And it's not always fun to listen to the voice of God. Sometimes it hurts other people when you make the right decision. More at the beginning. Because as you grow into it, this is just the reality you create, and so it's just what it is. But there's this wonderful thing called forgiveness. We get forgiven when we feel bad about things. We're like, oh God, I could have handled that a lot better, and I'm sorry. Tell somebody else, I could have handled that better. My bad. I'm sorry. I apologize. Somebody does you dirty. I just got to forgive them, God. I've got a destination. I've got a destiny to go to. I've just got to forgive the haters. Because if I don't forgive them, I'm just going to get stuck with them. Resentment, regret, anger, loathing, all stuck in the hater's mud. But then there in the future, there's my destiny. And what is my discipline then? Is my discipline to hear the voice of God and then follow the voice of God? Or is my discipline to hear the voice of the world and follow the voice of the world? And maybe my destiny is just right there in front of me all the time. And this isn't about no job. This is about purpose. This isn't about no relationship. This is about purpose. And freedom. Freedom to express our purpose. Why? Because our purpose is the truth of our being. Our real purpose is the truth of our being. And if we don't learn it in this life, we learn it in the next. And the lessons we didn't learn in the last one, we're learning right now in this one. So, let's have some fun with it. Why? Because we're going to make mistakes. We're growing. We're evolving. We're perfecting ourselves, as we'll read in the Gospel of Hip Hop later. That we're being perfected right now. It's just what it is. And it's perfect the way we're being perfected. If we're in harmony with God. And those parts of us that aren't in harmony with God, we just surrender. And God will bring them into harmony. And what I like, and what I really want to remind everybody is allow it to be a gradual process. Sometimes the gradual process leads to a sudden movement or a sudden shift in your life. But you'll look back, and while you're happy, you're like, you know what? This is a big shift in my life, but it feels great. I'm happy. I'm excited. I got I can't wait to get up tomorrow. I got something I got to do. I know where I'm going. I know my destiny. I know my purpose. I'm hip to my hop. I'm hip to my hop. I have up-to-date knowledge about myself. I have this information. I have this knowing about myself, this hip, this awareness. And with this knowing and this awareness, I have the ability to move. Intelligent movement, because the movement itself is intelligent. That's why it's one word, it's consciousness, because it's just the same thing happening. It's the oneness of hip hop. And then we can see that in the oneness, there's these wonderful yin-yang type energy, this interplay between in and out, and hip and hop, moving around. Creating the oneness, the consciousness, then creating the outer reality, the product. Boom. Bam. That's the metaphysics. I want to welcome you all here tonight. Just jumped right into the message. Thank you across all time and space for everyone attending this message from the minister. I believe this is number 70. And it's so interesting because I was thinking, like, I went before God today, right? And I was just like, I had this spontaneous moment with God today. And I was just like, oh man, I got this ugliness. I've been feeling a certain way about certain events in life and certain things that have happened. And I'm just feeling, and my energy's stuck right here. And I'm like, oh man, it's been stuck for a few days. I've been meditating. I've been eating right. I exercise. It's helping loosen it up. And then I was like, you know what? God, like, across all time and space, like, just forgive me of any of my ignorance, of my stupidity, of my immaturity, God. Just forgive me of my ignorance, stupidity, and immaturity. And God's like, bet. I know. You're ignorant. You're immature. You're stupid, Zin Uru. And I was like, oh my God, I already knew. But then after God pointed that out, it's like, but I have a responsibility. I can't be ignorant. I can't be immature. I can't be stupid. Not knowing God's here. We can't be ignorant, stupid, and immature knowing that God's right here with us. We can't. We just simply can't. And then I just said to God, I just release all this energy really that's in me because I know it's just old stuck energy that really doesn't serve our purpose. And what is our purpose? God, let me just surrender. What's your purpose for me? Why did you create me? God, can we just surrender this energy to just be transmuted into forward movement, intelligent movement? Yep, transmuted. Went right out. And there is a certain nature to God. When we go to God and we just are like, oh man, God, I'm just feeling this way. But God's like, oh, word, yeah, boom, boom, boom. If it's a sincere heart with a sincere request, and it's a sincere mistake, even if it's an ignorant and stupid mistake, but you're sincere about healing it, fixing it, repenting from it. I was like, all right, let's do it. But pay attention. You don't need to be doing that again because that's energy wasted that you could be putting towards something else, like your purpose. Wasted energy. We're made of energy. All of this energy all around. What is your energy? Your energy is your destiny. Energy is destiny. And what are you disciplined to put your energy towards? Right? What are we disciplining in ourselves collectively? What are we putting our energy towards as hip hop? Do you think the gifts you were born with were for you? They're not. They're for the whole community. Your gifts are for the community. And when you withhold your gifts from the world, you withhold the gifts from the community. I know. I do it. I've done it. Hadith. Put the book up here. Some of the teachings of Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. Just reading this week. I should have brought it out, but this was just inspired. I was really inspired by these stories of men going before Allah, going before God, and being like, and giving an accounting of their lives and why they did what they did. Allah, I did this in service to you. And then Allah's like, but I knew your heart. You didn't do it in service to me. You did it for yourself. And only yourself. I was like, that's deep because, we can try and fool God, but God's no fool. God will never be fooled. God ain't fooled by nothing we do. No trick. There's no tricking God. There's no deceiving God. There's no lying to God. Oh, we can do it, but God doesn't have to believe. God doesn't believe somebody's lie. God knows it's a lie the whole way down. God sees the deception. It's like, oh, that's deceiving. I see you deceiving me. But we're doing it for your health and your well-being. No, you're deceiving people. You're trying to deceive me. You want to give me poison and tell me it's for my own good. And that poison, that's the way of the world, is the poison. Especially when it comes to destiny and when we're destined. Where are you going after you leave this body? Do you know? Don't you think you should know where you're going after you leave this body? And not just I'm going to heaven. Well, what does heaven look like? What does heaven smell like? What does heaven feel like? Like this, but just a little better? Okay. But these questions should be asked and explored. And these questions should be asked to God. God, what happens after we die? I don't know, burn some sage and I'll tell you. You know? I've told this story before, and then we'll get to the definitions, because this is a good one. I was out cultivating at a ganja farm many years ago, 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, 2013. And it was an outdoor garden. I don't know, there's like 80, 90, 100 plants out there. Big old, just trees. Just trees. Ganja, like colas as big as my arm, just everywhere, just hanging out, just dripping with resin and goo. These things were held up by sticks and twigs. I would go out there and put a bamboo pole in the ground, a little thin bamboo pole, and tie some twine around and hold those colas up to the sun so they'd keep growing up and getting bigger and fatter, and then supporting the branch for their weight. But before all of that grew, oh man, yeah. I got to see the plant in its natural habitat. Like I saw the tree. It's a form of the tree of life, ganja. It's a fractal of the tree of life, and a grand fractal at that. One of the first, because it's crystalline, and people like the crystallographic nature of the flower. And the resin specifically, and the hairs. But those plants, it wanted to be set apart. I realized this always working with ganja and cultivating ganja. It asked people to be set apart. The plant is telling humans, telling us how it wants to be cultivated. I would ask the plant, like, how do you want me to hold up this? Oh yeah, hold me over there. There, that feels good. And I'll just kind of feel it with the plant. Like, I'm okay. The plant's branch isn't hurting. It's not pulling on the base. It's like, it's more comfortable here is where it wants. But a guy I worked with wrote his whole thesis of his bachelor degree on how plants communicate and teach us how to cultivate them. It's not just, plants talk to us and we listen. And the more we know we're listening, the more we hear from the plants, the healthier they become and the healthier we become. You know, like we used to sing songs to our gardens to grow the food. All those earth songs and songs of abundance, songs of joy, songs of fruit and balance, songs of nature, thank you. You know, all these songs that we used to sing to the earth and the food, and singing a song to our fruit and singing a song to our vegetables, and, you know, singing a song. I was rapping and freestyling with the trees. So I'm out there one night, right? It's a full moon. It's like, it was like, wow. And I'm smoking a bowl. And just all the smoke is going up, and it's just feeling the trees, right? And I've been talking with them already. And one of the trees, well, all of the trees said to me, they said, hey, what happens to us after we're smoked? What happens to us after we're smoked? I'm sitting there smoking their buds. I'm smoking their flowers. And it asked me, what happens to us after we're smoked? I was stumped. I was like, yo, let me think about this for a minute. It turned into carbon, and I mean, no scientific explanation is going to matter to Ja Herb, right? No scientific explanation, no matter equation, no philosophy, really. I tried. What is heaven? What is to a plant? Where do you go after you're smoked? Where do you go after you're smoked? After all this water just evaporates, and it's just ashes. Like, we're all getting smoked right now. You're like a nugget in a bowl getting smoked by God. And you're going to get exhaled. And where do you go? And I didn't know. And so I went back and I was getting ready for bedtime. You know, it was late. It was dark. And I just sat down at the altar. And I was looking at my altar, and there was some sage there. And I lit the candles, and I just said to the sage, I was like, yo, I lit the sage. And I was thinking that question, where does ganja go after it's smoked? And then the sage said, I'll tell him. Thank you. Thank you for that affirmation, Missy. And I looked at the sage, and the sage is smoking, and the ember, it was like a big, nice bundle. Just no lights, there's no electricity. I had no electricity, right? I'm just sitting there in the forest smelling that sage, and it's telling me, I'll tell them where they go. I was like, word. First thing in the morning, it wanted to go. I was like, I got to get up with the sun. Put the sage out, said my nightly prayers, went over to bed, slept. And because I'm living in the forest with no electricity, right, I got to make use of the sun in this garden time. So I just waking up with the sun. Wake up with the sun, go jump in a cold shower, grab the sage, go out to the garden, and I prayed. I just like, yo, great event creator of all that is. Like, yo, great creator. Like, may this just be a prayer that the sage will let them know where they go after they've been smoked. And so I lit the sage all up. I had a fan. I just started blowing that deep, thick sage smoke all through the buds, all through the trees, all through the leaves. All of them, got all of them. Saw it entering into the bigger forest around it. And whoa, did those ladies, those plants, those ganjas just go, ah. Yeah, I hear you, Miss Affirmation. Them plants just went, woo. And when those plants all relaxed, they knew what happened after they've been smoked. I know, but I don't speak smoke like that. Sage knows, it speaks smoke. And it's telling these other plants like, yo, it's wonderful. This is what happens. And they were at peace and wanted the harvest to come when the harvest was time. Is there a lesson here? That's nature. That's an experience nature with God. God put me in that event, ran into this is years later, ran into somebody at a coffee shop. He's like, yo, I heard about you. I said, yo, peace, what's good? He said, yo, I got the gospel of hip hop. I said, word. He said, I saw you rapping the other night. I said, dope. He said, you need anything? I said, yeah, I need a job right now, my dude. And he's like, oh, I'm looking for somebody. My brother's got a farm. I'll give you a spot to stay. You don't got to pay nothing. We'll give you hourly work, and you got a free spot to stay. And when it's all said and done, we'll all get paid. Boom, just like that. Just like that. And it's funny because I saw a thing, and it was like it said, always remember when you feel like you're getting pulled back in life or held back, that the arrow is getting pulled back by the bow before it's shot forward into its destination, into its destiny. That's where you're going. And if you feel like you're getting held back right now, you feel like there's tension, you feel like all that, it's just the bow being pulled back. arrive at your destiny then. And who's pulling the bow back? That's God. That ain't you. You're the arrow. You ain't even doing no work. Let's get real. What did I do to get in that job other than to say, hey, my dude, I need a job? He saw me rap. That don't mean I can take care of a garden. How many rappers out there can take care of a full ganja garden, a full grow? I don't know. I know I can. But dude didn't even ask me that. I saw you rap. Here, do you want to run a garden? I'm like, sure. Then he found out I had the experience. Then his brother hired me. And the only reason I'm bringing these stories up is because I didn't even plan on none of this to happen. It just happened. God just, and there are other things. There are other things. All of life isn't haphazard. All of life isn't haphazard. I saved that money. We used that money to create a tour with Supernatural. MC Supernatural. Boom. And we opened up and did a tour with MC Supernatural for like 2 months of touring based upon that garden and that work from the garden. Help fund that time that we needed and the events that we needed. And prayer did more work than that money ever did. And belief and visualization and an appreciation for hip hop and our place in hip hop and what we're capable of doing in hip hop. Intelligent movement. So there's a couple things going on here. One, God is pulling us back, shooting us forward, but we're the arrow. We got to be like, we can't just be like, oh, what's that? Whoa. Oh, what's that? Woo. Oh, you know, with an arrow, you got to move. You've got to be one with the wind. You've got to allow God's breath to carry us. That's all we got to do is allow God's breath to carry us, but we are also intelligently moving within that breath. We are the hip hop within the hip hop within the hip hop. Being hip hop. Let's read these definitions here. Put them up on the screen. Been talking about it long enough. Let's get some definitions. Deify the nation. Let's deify the nation with our definitions. First one, destination. Remember, discipline is destiny. And really the discipline we're talking about is hearing the voice of God and having no choice. It's not always easy. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a lot more fun. Sometimes it's a harder life lesson. But remember, God speaks subtly and God speaks loudly. God speaks with force and God speaks with, a nurturing, soft voice at times. God is not one-dimensional. God is all dimensions of all things all happening at once. God is speaking every sound. But what sound is God speaking to you? That will determine your destination and your destiny. Destination, the place to which one is going or directed. The place to which one is going or directed. That's the destination. You're going there. Okay? You're going there and you're being directed. The ultimate purpose for which something is created or intended. That's another destination. Look what we have here. Destination, number 2. The ultimate purpose for which something is created or intended. Wow, the ultimate purpose. Look at the power of that word. The ultimate purpose for which something is created or intended. What is your ultimate purpose being created and intended? The great intender. We call it the great creator. The great creator is also the great intender. What is the intention of God in your life, in our lives? Definition number 3, the archaic. An act of appointing or setting aside for a specific purpose. An act of appointing or setting aside for a specific purpose. A specific purpose. My nobility, what specific purpose has God set you aside for? That's your destination. Our destination. It's the specific purpose God has set us aside for. And what is an act? Perform action. That's the movement. That's the hop. The hip is knowing what the specific purpose is. The hop is the setting aside and the act of appointing. Destine. This is the older version of destiny. Destine. To determine beforehand. Preordained. Preordained. Once again, the American Heritage Dictionary, Volume 3, acknowledges God and the power of the supernatural. To determine beforehand, preordain. And this is where it gets deep. Because we actually get to determine beforehand and preordain certain events. That is what we have the ability to do. We create events and we preordain those events for what they will be. The teacher determined beforehand the temple of hip hop. Then he preordained the event, the temple of hip hop. And then really it was God speaking to him beforehand and then preordaining him to say the temple of hip hop. Then he spoke the temple of hip hop. And then others came and preordained the temple of hip hop itself through the teacher. Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Chief Rocker Busy Bee, Grandmaster Cass, Cindy, Pebbly Poo, all of them. Bless this work. The Gospel of Hip Hop that we're going to be reading from later as well. Destine, to assign for a specific end, use, or purpose. See, this is wonderful. We're just reflecting God's light. We're just a refractor of God's light. We're a multifaceted being, creating multi-dimensions of God's light going through us. And this with these multiple facets of energy. That's God's intention. That's God assigning us for a specific end, use, or purpose. And then through that, we get to co-create that specific designed purpose. We're doing the same work as God. We're doing the work of God. Definition number 3, to direct towards a given destination. We just talked about what a destination is. Now, to destine is to direct towards a given destination. That's the aim. What am I doing? What am I aiming? What am I aiming towards? Those who've read the depths of the great event in the Gospel of Hip Hop, you hear me? From Old French, destiner, from Latin, destinare, to determine. To determine. To have a determined outcome. That's the destine. That's the purpose. That's the purpose right here. Because you're making a decision. This is the decision comes in here. You're preordaining it. You're knowing beforehand. God's preordaining it to you. God knows you beforehand. So it's just a surrender to God. Starts putting your juices in motion. Starts putting our juices in motion. We start surrendering to God. Our light and our being and our mind just starts going in motion and things just start happening through us. Miracles. Destiny. The inevitable or necessary fate to which a particular person or thing is destined. One's lot. Synonymous with fate. The inevitable or necessary fate to which a particular person or thing is destined. One's lot. That arrow getting pulled back. When it gets launched, its destiny is right where it hits. It wasn't destined to go anywhere else. It hit its destination. It hit its destiny. It was inevitable, based on all the physics, how far back the arm was pulled, the wind, the strength of the bow, the snap of the bow, the tension in the string, how fast it's released by the fingers, how strong the arm is. Does the arm shake to the left or the right after it's been aimed? What's the arc as it's arcing through the air? All of that is determining its destination. And it's inevitable that with all of that happening, it's going to hit where it hits. I'm not saying it hits the mark. I'm not saying it misses the mark. What it's saying here is it's inevitable or necessary fate to which a particular person or thing is destined. One's lot. It's a fate. People don't like that. But it's physics. It's the choices we make. That's the strength of the bow, the tension, the aim. All of that has to do with the decisions that we make in life. So we can complain to God about our destiny, but guess what? We created it. We may have been doing it ignorantly. Ask God for forgiveness, and let's get our aim right. We may have been doing it on purpose. Get our aim right and still miss the mark. I'm advocating that we let go and let God. Let us be the arrow and let God launch us. Let God's perfection, God's laser focus, God's perfect insight, God's perfect aim. Let that launch us and let that be our destiny. A predetermined course of events considered as something beyond human power or control. A predetermined course of events considered as something beyond human power or control. I quit the job, and the events that were predetermined afterwards were set in motion. It's beyond my human power or control. I had no idea. And we were walking on faith. Definition number 3 of destiny. The power or agency thought to predetermine events. The power or agency thought to predetermine events. Fate. It's like this power or agency. They're talking about God. They're talking about the universe. They're talking about nature. Thought to predetermine events. You just look like, man, it was just the destiny. But if you really look, it's cause and effect. Like when the system crashes or the economy crashes or somebody's life crashes. It was destined to happen. It was destiny. We can look at all these predetermined events and say, oh, yep, that was predetermined to happen. Now there are miracles, okay? And miracles are also part of the destiny. The wind blows you back on course and you hit the target effortlessly. Miracle. Middle English, destin, we read that earlier. From Old French, destiny, from feminine past participle of destiner, to destine. And that's what we read, destine, which is the act of doing it. The destine is the act of the destiny. The destiny is the destine is like the cause. The destiny is the effect. So this is where miracles and God and forgiveness and really say, yo, you know what? Wait a minute. I can sit here and be like, oh, I'm going to pull back God's bow. Or I can be like, oh, yeah, I'm an arrow. Let God shoot me where God needs me to go. Or I'm multiple arrows. Green arrow. What else were we going to do? What else were we destined to do but arrive at this time and space where we're like, yo, if we just surrender to God, God already gave us hip hop. God already gave us intelligent movement and awareness of that intelligent movement that's already happening. And God gave us the ability to participate in this intelligent movement. Can we just all go all in? I know it's not, it actually sounds easier maybe than it is, but it's actually easier than it sounds too. Go all in with God. Just go all in. And a gradual process will take place. A gradual process will change. Your life will gradually grow. Heaven is not a place we go to, it's a place we grow to. Just like those plants, they grow. The sun, outdoor plants are the best. If you ever smoke herb, outdoor herb is far superior to indoor herb. Oh, but Zin, I got that bomb. Now, man, I've been around. I smoked a lot of weed over my years. The best that California had to offer, the Emerald Triangle. I've like lived all over the Emerald Triangle. Had that ocean grown, that OG, up in Humboldt County. Had them big Afghani, just dank, you just smoke it. And the whole room just keeps smelling of this dank goodness of earth. I know. Now smoke some high-grade indoor, just woo, take you there. I'm dissing. For me, the outdoor. Why? Because I worked on the outdoors and I saw what happened on the outdoors. Like, you get full spectrum sunlight. You get wind. You get cobwebs hitting the dirt in the soil, dead bugs in the soil. You get starlight in the herbs. Starlight, ooh, moonlight, ooh. The herb is affected by the moonlight. Maybe indoor growers should think about that. Starlight, maybe they already have. I had the first to think of this. But when you go outdoor like that, there's all this nature. There's spirits working with it. The wind itself, it's alive. Those plants would be like this, like, hey. They'd see me and wave. I go into an indoor plant, and they're like, woo, under lights, with fans going. And then when you smoke the indoor, you're like, you smoke the outdoor, you're like, and I'm not dissing either. But clearly in this analogy, God is the outdoor. God is nature. And what is that natural you? No matter where you're living, you're not living in nature. Most of us ain't living out in nature if we're fortunate enough to, dope. But wherever you're living, there's a natural person, a natural being, a supernatural being that has supernatural gifts. They're natural, but they're superpowered. And they're all inside of you already. All the answers are with you already. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing you got to read. It's all with you right now. And the right books will show up. And the right things you got to hear will just come into your ears. That's just how it happens. And you arrive at the right place right when you're supposed to. And you don't go where you're not supposed to. God protects you. And God's voice will speak and we hear. And ultimately, you know, like Krishna told Arjuna, like ultimately, Arjuna, what makes you think you're doing any of this? What makes you think you're doing any of this? Any of those mistakes you made? What makes you think you're doing any of those? Is not a higher force doing those through you? And I'm not excusing sin. I'm just saying mistakes are mistakes. Like we make mistakes. And we learn from our mistakes, and the universe and God learns from our mistakes and transmutes it into wisdom, and we take that wisdom and we perform overstanding with that wisdom. And then things really get done. And I know I'm talking to the future. A lot of times I know I'm talking to the future because they don't really hear right now. Those who hear me, you are the future. But I'm just saying, like I'm saying this stuff weekly, 70 of these things, 70 of them. Saying this all the time, speaking it all the time. Most ain't hearing a word I have to say, nothing. Most ain't hearing a word the teacher has to say, but big up to those who are, and there's more and more each year. But just know the future, looking back on this time, people wasn't listening. People was misled and mistakes and and trapped into the system for real. Like, I mean, have compassion. all of us, on one another here. We're trapped in a system that the devil designed, suffering from this devil's most heinous crime. He's trying to keep us from the reason we were born, which is to be the ever-living truth in human form. And big up to Prince for those lyrics on the Rainbow Children album. Let's have compassion on one another, and like the weaknesses and the sleeplessness and the unconsciousness and the ignorance. Like, we got to take responsibility. We know this. We know we got to be disciplined now. This is where the discipline comes in now. We know we've got to get disciplined, but part of that discipline has to be compassion. Because when we're compassionate for the situation people are in a system that the devil designed, and they're suffering from this devil's most heinous crime, and the reason that we were born, which is to be the living truth in human form, we see our brothers and sisters trapped, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do, is say, please know that. I was in that system. I'm still here. And I know that the devil is trying to keep us from the reason that we were born, which is to be the living truth in human form. And what is the living truth? That's our destiny. That's where we're going. Is it all of us? I don't know. I know where I'm going. I know my destiny. And it's not been easy, but it's easy. It's been hard, but it ain't been hard. Would I do it again? No. Would I do it again? Yes. It's beyond duality. We get out of that duality. Who's the greatest? Who's this? Who's that? What's the best? What's the best? We get out of that duality. And then we get into the reality. We get out of duality and we get into reality. Get out of duality and enter into reality. Get out of duality and enter into reality. Let's read from the Gospel of Hip Hop about discipline. This is in the third overstanding, the divine performance. And let's see here. Do I have it on my, I think I got my bookmark here. I should, yeah. You can, this is divine performance number 4, to perform discipline in the third overstanding. The divine performance in the Gospel of Hip Hop, written by KRS-One, the teacher, and presented to the Temple of Hip Hop. And if you turn to page 156, you can read along. I'll have probably a little commentary on this, but once again, I just really like the gospel just to speak, because you'll hear what you're here to hear from these words of wisdom from the teacher. Perform discipline. Every day we are faced with opportunities to perform discipline, self-control. The attuned hip-hopper uses moments of temptation to practice restraint, moments of fear to practice faith, and moments of anger and anxiety to practice patience and inner calmness. These are divine performances. In all actions, use moderation. Temptation, fear, anger, etc. can be used as tests to strengthen your mind and body. Seek balance. Do not overindulge, for this act leads to suffering. Control yourself. Self-control is your only friend, while temptation is your only enemy. And we got to say that one again. Self-control is your only friend, while temptation is your only enemy. Somebody please make that shirt. Somebody please design that t-shirt. Self-control is your only friend, while temptation is your only enemy. You talk about a message for everybody? Oh, who's going to argue with that? That's a great conversation starter. That's a great reminder. That's a great ministry shirt. Self-control is your only friend, while temptation is your only enemy. Never forget this. A hip-hop's spiritual strength is not measured by what can be resisted in the flesh. It is measured by that which is resisted in the mind. See, Look at this. Spiritual strength is not measured. Now, as hippapas, our spiritual strength is not measured by what can be resisted in the flesh. It is measured by that which is resisted in the mind. In order to change or modify your behavior, you must first change or modify the picture you hold of yourself in your mind. How do you see yourself? What is your perception of yourself? What do you mean to you? How valuable are you to you? How serious do you take yourself? On the inside, what do you look like to you? Do you say often, "Ain't nobody perfect"? If this is how you see yourself, imperfect, then you shall never be even close to perfect. Your affirmation is final. The world shall have its way with you. Temptations of all sorts attack unperfected people constantly. Such people actually weaken themselves by affirming and believing that they are imperfect. It's like saying to the world, "Come and get me." Such an affirmation leads nowhere. However, if you even reach for perfection in your own imperfect life, which is perfectly imperfect, such an act will indeed protect you from the world and its temptations. For in the material world, it is not perfection that is needed to protect you from temptation. It is the actual desire for perfection that is an indestructible shield and sword against the world and its agents of temptation. Never give up. Keep trying. Seek truth. The truth is that temptation is always temporary. See it, my nobility, see it. The truth is that temptation is always temporary. All temptations are spiritual tests. What? All temptations are spiritual tests. Therefore, when you are tempted, it is very important to be still and not say or do anything. Indeed, the temptation shall pass. Try to remember that temptation is always temporary, but if you give in to it all the time, its unpleasant after effects can last a long time, even a lifetime. In addition, resisting temptation strengthens one's faith. It is like lifting spiritual weights or exercising. Resisting temptation strengthens one's spiritual vitality. However, the question here is, why should I resist temptation? The answer? Because satisfying the call of temptation, as opposed to the call of purpose, leads to guilt, which can weaken your faith. Satisfying the call of the world, my nobility. We're talking about hearing the voice of God at the beginning of this message. That's the purpose. That's the spirit. And when we listen to the temptations of the world, and we're followed by the world, and we listen to the voice of the world, that leads to guilt, which weakens our faith. Paragraph 7. Therefore, we must take advantage of temptation. We cannot allow temptation to take advantage of us. Again, therefore, we must take advantage of temptation. We cannot allow temptation to take advantage of us. When you know in your heart that you live righteously and your mind is focused only upon the fulfillment of your divine purpose, you expect the favor of God. And it is this expectancy that is at the center of one's faith and courage. Look at that. When you know in your heart that you live righteously and your mind is focused only upon the fulfillment of your divine purpose, you expect the favor of God. It's your destiny, my nobility. And it is this expectancy that is at the center of one's faith and courage. This is performed discipline, my nobility. It's deep. But when you know in your heart that you are guilty of actions that you perceived as spiritually weak, evil, or immoral, you do not expect the favor of God. You hide from the presence of God. And it is this expectancy, expecting not to receive the favor of God, that is at the center of your doubts and fears. It is your own guilt that diminishes your faith and thus your ability to achieve your divine purpose. Ultimately, we judge and then weaken ourselves through guilt caused by our submission to temptation and other weaknesses. Self-control and virtuous living strengthens your faith in God's favor upon you, which in turn enhances your ability to achieve your purpose and even perform miracles in your life and in the lives of others. Man, I got to read most of this 2 times. Self-control and virtuous living strengthens your faith in God's favor upon you. This is destiny, which in turn enhances your ability to achieve your purpose and even perform miracles in your life and in the lives of others. Self-control makes you certain of your trustworthiness before God. And it is this trustworthiness that empowers your faith to achieve your divine purpose and perform miracles. Spiritual strength is also measured by one's patience and endurance. Remember, endurance is insurance. For when you know in your heart that you live a righteous life and that God's favor is upon you, those things that you do not have, those people that you do not see, and those places that you do not go are all for your own good. For one of the keys to lasting discipline is when one becomes serious about actually acknowledging the real presence of God. For when you know that God is with you, watching you, listening to you, etc., you need not try to be disciplined. You are automatically disciplined by the presence of God in your midst. Undisciplined people can be said to simply not believe in the presence of God or their own spiritual abilities. They ignore their God and their own access to their own God force. Truth is always with them, but they ignore it. Love is always with them. Peace, wealth, knowledge, healing, etc. are always available to us, but we simply ignore them because we really don't believe that we deserve these gifts. We know to ourselves that we are imperfect because of the temptations that we have fallen to, and with such knowledge, we judge and limit ourselves. See the energy. Just reading that, you can just see that when we ignore the things like peace, wealth, knowledge, and love, it's like we cut ourselves off from them. But even though they're always there, we're the ones who are cutting ourselves off from God, and we don't have to. It's just guilt. Giving up inspirational living towards yourself. Perform forgiveness. God's right here with you right now. Paragraph 14. Discipline over the desires of the body and mind come when you truly acknowledge the existence and presence of God right next to you. Know this, a true awareness of God causes discipline to automatically happen to you. One does not have to actually be disciplined to keep one's hand off of a hot stove. It is not that you need to restrain yourself from touching the hot stove. It is more the fact that you do not want to burn your hand. In this example, discipline is not only a matter of awareness, it is also a matter of taking care of yourself. It is a matter of self-respect. Again, seek the truth of God's actual presence, and discipline is sure to follow. For the attuned hip hopper, discipline has more to do with realizing truth and having respect for oneself than the practice of restraint. The whole divine performance is a disciplinary training exercise designed to produce a hip-hop character/behavior that prepares one for leadership and victory over the obstacles of the streets. Therefore, we must remember to use moments of anxiety to perform patience and calm. Use moments of depression to perform joy. Commit to yourself. Bring order to yourself by recognizing and truly respecting only the existence and value of God in your life. Make the conscious decision to value your God. Stop burning your hands upon the hot stoves of the world's temptations. This is spiritual strength. This is a divine performance. Start your discipline practice small by resisting your favorite cake as an example. Try not to overeat. Speak less. Turn off or unplug the television. Cease listening to the radio and your iPhone and your smartphone and your computer and your smart television. Go on to resist argument and gossip. Begin repeating an affirmation or prayer regularly. You might want to attend places of prayer. Practice fasting from junk foods, recreational drugs, intoxicating drinks, lustful desires, unproductive conversations, and even the careless spending of money. In these examples, the achievement of discipline is a matter of spiritual self-respect, which leads to physical self-control. Now may be the time to truly care for yourself and most of all, value yourself. These lead to discipline. The teacher practices withdrawing his senses from the happenings of the material world. With this performance, the teacher escapes the inconsistent and sometimes dangerous events of the world. But the teacher is mindful not to become too distant from those whom he is teaching. Balance is the key. If you have proven your discipline and self-governance, you can indulge in worldly temptations at times. The practice of discipline is not to abstain from the happenings of the physical world. It is to be strong enough to stop and start such activities at will. The teacher is simply free from addiction. In fact, when it is pleasurable to abstain from pleasure, one can be called teacher. When one looks forward to moments of self-restraint, one can be called teacher. The teacher is unattached and mentally independent. The teacher is not lured nor tempted towards pleasure. The teacher freely and willingly chooses pleasure. The world and its temptations do not move the teacher. As Henry Frederick Amiel has pointed out, the man who has no refuge in himself, who lives, so to speak, in his front rooms, in the outer whirlwind of things and opinions, is not properly a personality at all. He floats with the current, who does not guide himself according to higher principles, who has no ideal, no convictions. Such a man is a mere article of the world's furniture, a thing moved, instead of a living and moving being, an echo, not a voice. The man who has no inner life is the slave of his surroundings, as a barometer is the obedient servant of the air at rest, and the weathercock, the humble servant of the air in motion. Perform discipline. Perform discipline, my nobility. And that last part by Frederick Amiel, it's amazing because he's saying that the man who has no inner voice, who doesn't hear the inner voice, is nothing but a piece of furniture that's getting moved around by the world. He's a weathercock. You know those things that used to sit on top of the barns, right? And it would say like north and south, and the wind would blow and go, and wherever the wind would blow, the weathercock would move. It would just move. So the farmers knew which direction the wind was blowing. Is that how people are living their lives? The world's just, oh, you're just a piece of furniture. I'm going to move you from this job to this job. You're just a piece of furniture. Now you could be, this is dope. Let's bring it here. This was just an inspiration. You're an action figure, and your higher self is playing with the action figure. Teacher taught me this. Ooh, I shouldn't give this secret out. But those who are wise enough to follow a message from the minister, you can get this little jewel. You're an action figure. This body, the way you dress, you get to dress it. This is your action figure right here. I guess girls would call it their doll. Us dudes, we had action figures, G.I. Joes. Transformers, Star Wars action figures. But with these action figures, you can pose these action figures, you know. The newer action figures, they have fingers that move and can grip things, and they're this big. These action figures, but you're an action figure, and you can move this, and you can put yourself in different action settings. And really, though, that's your higher self, which has to be the only. If your higher self is accessing this, and this is access to your higher self, that's God's will, plan, and purpose. Okay, because people don't reach their higher selves following the world. There's no way of the world that's going to teach somebody about their higher self to get in the next lifetime. What are you getting in this lifetime? Your discipline is your destiny. Destiny is your discipline. It's your destination. What we discipline ourselves to is where we're destined to go. Where we discipline ourselves to go as a community, as a temple, as humanity. Where are we going? What's our destiny? And what's our personal destiny? What's your purpose in life? Why are you you? Why are you here? What are you doing here? You already know. This is the beauty of it. You already know the answer. You already know your destiny. You already know your purpose. God's voice is already speaking to you. God's voice is yelling at you sometimes. God's voice is teaching you sometimes. God's voice is giving you comfort sometimes. God's voice is giving God's voice is moving through you right now. Just turn the radio dial into God's tune. Tune into God. Ooh. Tune the body. Ooh. Tune the radio dial into God. Ooh, I hear God's voice now. Oh man, listen to that. God's voice is coming through, multi-layered. Oh, God's telling me, and then you start moving around and God's preparing you. You listen to God's voice and then a miracle happens. And so, like I was saying earlier about going on that super adventure after I quit the job. I had no idea about the adventure. I had none of that. I quit that thing and I was like, okay, I did what I felt I had to do. I felt good about it. My brain was kind of like going through the shock of it all. And I just started packing my stuff up. And I made the call. And things started happening. I started moving. But it was just one of those times I didn't doubt it that time. I'd been through it before. I quit jobs before where I doubted and went through that. And then God had to come and rescue me as opposed to me just being in alignment with God and hitting the mark already. Hitting the target already. But that time, that was like the second or third job I had, or probably, third or fourth maybe, job I quit. I just quit that as the third. Yeah. I quit that job, and just because I'd been through it before, I didn't have no doubt. I didn't have to go through the fear of it. I didn't have to go through the, what am I going to do? Panic. And I didn't go through none of that. God just moved me and put me on the adventure. And then I just didn't do that anymore. I just said, you know what, let me just stay on this adventure. And part of that adventure was I got the job working at the Ganja Garden for a couple, 2.5, 3 months, the whole season. Did the whole season there, got to rap all amongst, I got to go out and rap and do all kinds of fun stuff. But I had a responsibility in the job, so there's a whole bunch of other stuff I had to miss out on. But that's performing discipline. Because when we're performing discipline and listening to our purpose, God will put us where we need to be and keep us from where we don't need to go. And when you're somewhere you're not supposed to be and you have that feeling, woo! You don't want to feel it again and again. When you're somewhere you know you're not supposed to be. This is awkward. It's awkward for the universe. It's awkward for everyone. Okay? And you're really where you're supposed to be. If you're learning that lesson, I'm somewhere I'm not supposed to be, then you're supposed to be there because you're learning the lesson. So you're already back on the way to attunement and enlightenment and alignment with God. God's will, plan, and purpose for your life. And it's not easy. And people are going to get mad at you sometimes, and people may even hate you sometimes. People will dish you. People talk bad about you. People will plot against you. All kind of stuff happens. You might lose a partner. You might lose your kids. What is your destiny? Where's God aiming you? Where's God pulling back and aiming you and letting you go with God's perfect aim, God's perfect direction, and you are soaring through the air like an arrow. And feel that momentum. And then you're going to hit that mark and that destiny. No matter what mistakes you make from here on out, you will hit the mark if you're surrendered to God. God will have the wind correct you. And there it is, my nobility. As you go forward this week in health, love, awareness, and wealth, peace, and prosperity. And there it is. Hey!